Welcome to OAA Now, your home for Oakland Activities Association news and information. Here's your host, Sammy Taramina.
Welcome to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Taramina, blog of the Dragon's Den, blog from inside the OAA, and one of the hosts between Taramina and Oriented Neighborhood Television. I'd like to welcome our friends watching on Oxford Community Television and watching on YouTube. This week we're going to talk about several topics to discuss what's going on throughout the entire league, especially starting with the school year. Of course, it is now officially underway. So, let's talk about the first 2 weeks of the season for football. When you look at the season so far, there's been a lot of shockers, a lot of surprises, for positive, a lot of negative. But there's a couple teams we're going to touch to on what is going on with their seasons. Let's look at each game, of course. Let's look at our first team, of course. Let's look at a team that I think has been a really good surprise right now. Is the Royal Oak Ravens. And you look at the Ravens so far. Now, this is a football team that's off to a 2-0 start. It's the first time in their school history that they have been 2-0. And, and that is saying, and Royal Oak's been a school for about 11 years now, ever since they merged with Royal Oak, Kimball, Royal Oak, Don Darrow. So when you look at Royal Oak, to be 2-0 under Ray McMahon, it's a good start for this program. But, have they really played anybody really impressive? I mean, yeah, you beat St. Clair Shores Lakeview 21-0, but Lakeview only has 4 players back from their team. And then you take on North Farmington, of course, a team that completely is rebuilding. And you look at what happened. Royal Oak won that one 38-6. And, Royal Oak, they're a team, they're up and coming. But, have they really played anybody? And you really look at Royal Oak, this is a football team that, I think they're going to get tested with Hazel Park. Now, Hazel Park had a nice bounce-back win against Avondale. So we're going to talk about Avondale in a couple minutes. Of course, they're one of my teams that I thought really has been going downhill a little bit. But Royal Oak's a team I think definitely to keep an eye on during the season. I mean, Ray McMahon's done a really nice job building that team up. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the Ravens have this upcoming with the rest of the regular season. So Royal Oak right now is in a really, really good spot when you look at how much this football team has really, really gone up right now. And you look at that team, Patrick Tetchko's had a nice start. I mean, they've really bounced back. And you really look at Royal Oak, I think that this is a football team that could be a team that could do some damage this upcoming season. Another team to mention, of course, is the Ferndale Eagles. Of course, Ferndale, it's a team that was not at Media Day, but they had a lot of talent when you look at them. Guys like Keshawn Smith and Zozer Little. I mean, but they have a wide receiver in their name, John Thompson. John Thompson's an interesting guy to look at for Ferndale. Now, Ferndale, of course, we know is technically they're a co-op program with Ferndale University. But Eric Rose managed to get this team on the right track, especially proving that 7-2 season was no fluke. I mean, you look at Ferndale, of course, winning those 2 big games. Of course, the Farmington game I thought was very important because you look at that Farmington game, it just proves a lot of people that Ferndale, they could be a serious contender in this blue division. And you really look at Ferndale. I mean, nobody ever thought that Ferndale would be back to where they're at right now. Now, they had to make a stop in the third quarter. Of course, they had that stop, which led to 24 unanswered points for Ferndale, leading them that 37-7 blowout. But, if they don't get that stop, who knows what happens. So, when you look at Ferndale, of course, right now, they're sitting real pretty right now. They are 2-0. They have a solid offensive attack, of course, led, by Keshawn Smith, who's had a really, really nice start to his season. And then you have Zozer Little, of course, a very good running back. Basically, Ferndale is like they're playing they're playing really well to what they left off, from last year. So they took what they used last year to put into this year. I had concerns about the Eagles with their line play. I mean, their line was very much a big concern for me heading in the year. Their defense was a big concern for me heading in the year. But the last 2 games, Ferndale's only allowed 7 points. And they've scored. They've started scoring on people as well. So, Ferndale right now, red hot right now. They are steamrolling right now. They are a team that is steamrolling right now. Just really, really much the way that they've been playing. Of course, this Ferndale team, they have nowhere to go but up. But I think that game week 4 against Birmingham Detroit Country Day is going to say a lot about this team. Because Detroit Country Day, a very good team, Yellow Jackets, of course, it's going to be a challenge for them going forward. So it's going to be interesting to see what Ferndale has heading into that game with the Birmingham Detroit Country Day in that matchup. Other games to notice, of course, we're going to talk specifically 2 games. Of course, there may be 3 games if you count what happened. Let's talk about these 3 games because they're going to have huge ramifications. Of course, let's look at the first one. Of course, it was West Bloomfield taking on Bloomfield Hills. Of course, this was a game where West Bloomfield was leading. They were leading 24-7 in the mid-4th quarter. However, Bloomfield Hills led, of course, by their quarterback, John Paddock. And, of course, you have Ty Zielinski, of course, led the Blackhawks back. And, of course, that ended up being a 28-24 Bloomfield Hills win down in the swamp against the Lakers. It was just shocking, to say the least. A lot of people were shocked, even myself. And you really look at what happened in that game. I mean, it tells me 2 things. One, Bloomfield Hills has the desire to play and come back. They came back from 17 down. Basically, a lot of people said, okay, you can pack it in. You're down 24-7. You're struggling. And then they came all the way back, giving Dan Loria his 100th win. Now, with Bloomfield Hills, of course, I talked to Dan Loria during me today. And he said that, the quarterback is the key to everything. In that game with West Bloomfield, he proved it right. Because when you look at what happened, this was a matchup that everybody thought that West Bloomfield's superior talent to the outside, the wide receivers, would be dominant in this game. They showed up, 24 is a respectable number. But when you look at West Bloomfield defensively, they've got some issues. I don't know what happened that game down there in the swamp, but it looked like West Bloomfield kind of stopped playing. And I know that's going to make Coach Ron Bellamy nuts. That'll make him absolutely nuts. And, was it the fact that they took Bloomfield Hills lightly? Bloomfield Hills moved up 2 divisions. And West Bloomfield beat Bloomfield Hills in the playoffs last year. They took John Paddock out of the game that year in the playoffs. Do I think it would have made a difference last year compared to this year's game? No. But, it just tells me Bloomfield Hills' desire in that game. And the fact, Bloomfield's got a very tough schedule. They got to play Clarkson this week, and then they got to go to, they still got Lake Orion Adams at home, and then they got to go to Southfield and Oxford. That's not going to be easy games for Bloomfield Hills. But that win in the swamp is really, really important because, the MHA is going to really look at that. And they're going to say, okay, Bloomfield Hills, if they were to get in at 5-4, if they get in the playoffs at 5-4, that's a game they're going to look at and say, hey, West Bloomfield won that game. They got in the playoffs at 5-4. So that's a huge accomplishment for Bloomfield Hills. Now for West Bloomfield, here's the deal for the Lakers. Sit 0-2. You got Lake Orion, another 0-2 team this week. You got to find your defensive identity. That's what I'm looking for West Bloomfield is, does this team, it's not from an offensive mindset. They have enough offense. Of course, when you look at Bryce Beasley, you look at Jordan Rush, and then, of course, your wide receivers. You look at A.J. Abbott, Colin Hurd, Bryce Thompson. I mean, they got all the talent in the world. I mean, this is a good football team. But for them to lose that game at home, opening up your new turf in the swamp, that's sickening. That is mind-boggling. That is absolutely insane. How would you think that if Bloomfield Hills was a team that you should have beat and you let them take it away from you? I mean, what do you say? What do you say? I mean, do I think West Bloomfield is in trouble right now? No, I don't think they are. I don't think they're in that much trouble. I really don't. Because they still haven't developed the chemistry yet. And yeah, you took on a team like Wall Lake Western. Very good team. Sam Johnson III, good quarterback. Solid quarterback. I mean, you look at that team and say to me that if you would have beat Wall Lake Western, that would have been a great game. That would have been a huge win for you. Instead, now you're looking at 0-2. You're at 0-2, face another 0-2 team. We'll go over that other 0-2 team in a minute. And then you look at Lake Orion in a minute, but you look at that other match. You look at that West Bloomfield and say, hey, it's time to start. It's time to start putting away all that hype and all that talent aside. You got to put that all aside and start acting like a team. That's what I think West Bloomfield needs to act like. I'm not being mean to them, but you're 0-2. You got to do something. You really got to do something. Now let's look at Lake Orion. I don't know what to say about this team. I don't know what to say about the Dragons. This team's got problems. Big time problems. 39-8 to Adams on Thursday night. They looked confused. They looked rattled. This was a team that did not have it in all three phases of the game. They've got a problem at quarterback. They got to settle on a quarterback. This team's got to settle on one. The defense, they did not look good against Sevier. I mean, they were just destroyed up front. Steven Roncelli had 2 touchdowns against them. And then you let a sophomore quarterback in Connor Ferris, who we talked about during media day, he goes and throws 3 touchdowns. What does that have to say? That's horrible. That is horrible. And then, your offense basically, you got problems on that side of the ball. You don't have a passing game. You're truly one-dimensional. That's not good. Does this football team miss Chris Bell? And I think they do. I think this football team misses Chris Bell. And I'm not being mean here, but, they've got offensive identity problems. You got. If I'm Coach John Blackstock, you got to settle on a quarterback. I don't think a 2-quarterback system works in this league, especially when you're in the red division and you have a tough schedule. You got to figure a way to shore that defense up. And I think they'll get it fixed. I really believe that this team can get it fixed. But they've got problems in secondary and in defensive line. They've got some big problems there. I mean, this team has to show more balance if they're going to be successful. And they really haven't shown me that. They haven't shown me that balance. When you look at it, you got to have an offensive identity if you want to be successful. You look at all the good teams that have settled on quarterbacks. Of course, Clarkson, Nate Ubali there. I mean, South Arson Tech, yeah, they're 0-2, but they're still a good team. They got a quarterback by a name. They got John Darby. And then you look at West Bloomfield, yeah, they're 0-2, but they got a quarterback in Bryce Beasley. I mean, you look at, of course, Bloomfield Hills, John Paddock. And then, of course, you look at Adams. You know, Adams is a team, if Connor Ferris is not their starter, not being mean Zach Solomon. I think Zach Solomon is going to be a really good player for this team. But Connor Ferris, I think, has done a really good job to earn himself that starting spot for Tony Petrio's team. But for Lake Orion, here are the things you got to do. Settle on a quarterback. Settle on an offensive identity. Get your defense in order, especially your line, your secondary, and everything's fine. And everything will be okay. But now you put yourself in a real bad spot, especially now you got West Bloomfield this week. Then you're gonna have to play Bloomfield Hills later in the year on the road. Then you gotta go to Oxford, gotta go to Clarkson, you host Southfield Arts and Tech. That's not easy for Lake Orion. That is not easy. I'm not being mean to this team, but they've got to address a lot of things. And I mean that. And I'm being honest. They've got to address a lot of things. What happened last week was completely abysmal. Looked confused, couldn't stop the fear. You know, that bothers me. That really bothers me. You know, if I'm Lake Orion, time to get the things fixed. Seriously. Seriously. Another team, you know, I think Southfield Arts and Tech, they're 0-2, but, you know, when you look at the Warriors, it's a football team that really, they've got to get some things addressed. You know, when you look at the Warriors, of course, yeah, they lost 17-7 to Clarkson. Turnovers were a huge difference in that game. I mean, Clarkson's had a good defense. They've got a very good defense, but 4 turnovers ain't going to get it done, especially on the road at Clarkson. Well, and also what didn't help them was Clarkson was motivated. They were motivated for that game, and what happened was, you know, when you're motivated, coming off a loss last year, you know, it's going to sting. It's going to sting. I mean, you know, but I'm not pressing the panic button on Southfield Arts and Tech right now. I think they're fine. I think they're fine. I mean, I'm not pressing the panic button. Team I should press another panic button is Farmington. You look at the Falcons. You know, as mentioned, Ferndale beat them 37-7. But when you look at, Farmington's got a new coach in Corey Soroch. But this is a football team I seriously think's got big problems. I think you got more problems than Oregon. Because when you look at it here, this is a football team. They lost a heartbreaker to Berkeley, but then blown out by Ferndale. And then you got to play Harper Woods Chandler Park Academy this week. Not going to be easy. Really, it's not. But, you know, when you look at it here, this team, I think Farmington's got problems. North Farmington, another team, I think they got some issues as well they got to address. But a team here, I think that has some, that I think right now is in a crossroads is Avondale. The Yellow Jackets are a team that really, I thought personally, would have a bounce back year under Ed Couturier. Fortunately, they sit 0-2. They sit 0-2 after losing to Hazel Park 24-21. Yeah, Gary Griffiths, your defensive coordinator at Hazel Park. And it was a big win for them because Hazel Park last season gave a ton of points. Now you bring in Griffin, and he has turned that defense around. But what I'm shocked is Avondale's got all these athletes. All these athletes, they are athletic, and yet they sit 0-2. How is that? How is the fact that Avondale's a team that sits at 0-2 right now, and yet this team's got problems? this team's got some serious problems. They got some issues on defense. I mean, they gave up 48 to Troy first week and then 24 the next week. That's not good. Then you got Ferndale, who's coming in red hot. And you got to go to Ferndale. What does that have to say? What does that say? It's going to be tough. No doubt it's going to be tough. So we'll see what happens. We shall see what happens. But if I look at right now, teams I'm not panicking on right now, I'm not panicking. 0-2 team I'm not panicking on right now. Southfield Arts and Tech, not panicking on them. Teams I am worried about are Lake Orion, Farmington, and Avondale. Those are teams that are 0-2 right now. And they've got to fix a lot of things. They've got to fix a ton of things. And, yeah, I understand it's a process. Each of these teams have new coaches. And a transition is going to have to happen during the season. But, when you look at Farmington, of course, you have John Bechtel has been in the system. You have Corey Throach has been in the system as defensive coordinator. John Blackstock at Lake Orion, he's been in the system under Chris Bell as his secondaries coach. So when you look at it, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult to say the fact that this is a team that they've got some issues. They've got problems. I mean, both Lake Orion, Farmington, and Avondale. Avondale right now, I don't think it's good right now in Avondale. And that's saying a lot because it's a football team that's really got some issues right now. And I mean they got some issues. Serious issues that they have to address. Now, when I look at teams that can bounce back from an 0-2 hole, I think Lake Orion's got a shot. I think Southfield Arts and Tech will definitely do it. I think West Bloomfield's got a shot, too, to bounce back from an 0-2 start. But these teams have got to start winning. I don't think Avondale can, and I don't think Farmington can. I mean, I also don't know about North Farmington. They can do it. So, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens going forward. We shall see what happens going forward. Okay, when we come back, we're going to talk about volleyball here. Of course, volleyball well underway in their season here on OAA Now. Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Termina here. Of course, talk some volleyball here a little bit. When you look at volleyball, I mean, this is a team that, these are some teams that I think are going to be really loaded. The OAA this year, pretty loaded. Of course, when you look at some powerhouse programs like Clarkston, Lake Orion, Clarkston, Lake Orion, Blueberry Hills, Stony Creek, those are going to be some teams to definitely keep an eye on this year in the red division. The white, you got Adams. Blue division, of course, you got the blue division, I think you got Farmington. So when you look at teams right now, Lake Orion's off to a really nice start. They've won 2 tournaments. Of course, they won their own invitational and Wixom. And then last week in Waterford, they won the tournament at Stony Creek, at the Stony Creek Invitational. Of course, knocking off Adams. So when you look at Lake Orion, they're right now in mid-season mode. Of course, it's a very talented team that they got. Of course, you look at a girl like Danielle Sargent. Of course, you look at Wynn McCauley, Lauren Van Loon. But then you got to look at the 2 additions they had. Of course, Paige Briggs coming over from Oxford, and of course, Sydney Smith from Avondale. You look at those 2, and Sydney Smith has been a huge. Paige Briggs, I think, has been a big addition to this team. Really, really big addition. But so has Sydney Smith. Those 2 have been really, really big additions to get Coach Tony Scavarda's team to get to where they are today. I mean, they're going to be really tough to beat. And they've beaten Clarkson twice so far early. I mean, Clarkson coming in the air, I thought would be, Clarkson's still going to be a solid team. There's no doubt about it. But the way Lake Orion's playing right now, it's hard to beat them. But then again, I think about this. Lake Orion had a nice start early, middle of the year. But you look at Clarkson. Clarkson struggled early. Then they picked up. They picked up, improved once the late October to November came. And yet Clarkson started playing better. And then once they get in the postseason, Clarkson's tough to beat. So when you look at Lake Orion and Clarkston in volleyball, I view both those teams as even matched. They're evenly matched. Because when you look at Clarkston and Lake Orion, and yet these two teams, let's not forget, back in 2011, both these teams met in the state semifinals. The next year, they were in the district playoffs. So can you just imagine yourself if you split Clarkston and Lake Orion up? You take Clarkston, put them northwest up into Fenton. I think Clarkston gives Fenton a lot of problems. There's no doubt. I think Clarkston would eliminate Fenton this time around, unlike what happened last year. Of course, when Fenton went and beat Clarkston in the regional final. So if you put Clarkston with Fenton, Grand Blanc, there's no doubt. I think Clarkston would be a team to keep an eye on, especially if they go north. Lake Orion. Back in 2011, of course, they went east. Took out Macomb, Dakota. Took out Birmingham, Marion. So when you look at Lake Orion, if you put them east into Macomb County, I think Macomb County this year, not necessarily the greatest, but you still have Utica Eisenhower in there, who's solid. Romeo's always solid. Macomb, Dakota's always solid. And, of course, you have Anchor Bay. So you basically think if you put Lake Orion out east, you put them east in Macomb County and maybe in the extreme, the central part of the county, I think Lake Orion arguably is the best team. Now, you won't probably say about Boomby Hills. Boomby Hills is solid. Birmingham Marion's solid. But if you put them in a match with the Dragons, I don't think neither team matches them up well. I don't think Birmingham Marion matches up well at Lake Orion. Now, Bloomby Hills, they're going to see Lake Orion during the season of Bloomby Hills. I think that wouldn't surprise me. That goes 5. Really wouldn't. But when you look at the red right now, when you look at Clarkson, Lake Orion, I think they're I think they're evenly matched. They really are. And then you have a team named Bloomby Hills, as we mentioned earlier. Bloomby Hills is a team I think could be they're a dangerous sleeper. They have a girl named Alexa Roussel on that team. Very talented player. Really gifted player. She is that good. She's only a sophomore. Last year, the freshmen, they had Clarkston beat. They really had Clarkston beat. However, Clarkson found a way, won that game. Got to give the Wolves credit for winning that game. Now, yeah, Clarkson's tough to beat at Clarkson. Lake Orion did it once last year to him. But Bloomby Hills should have done it to him. So Bloomby Hills on the bottom hurdle. Good team, really good team. I think they're going to be a dangerous team later I think they're going to be a really, really dangerous team. They could threaten Lake Orion Clarkson in the red division this year. Then you have a team named Stony Creek in there. Stony Creek, of course, under Ross Talbot, of course, formerly coach at Lake Orion, lost in the quarterfinal of the Dragons. And then they go out this past weekend, win the Crosswell-Lexington tournament, and you basically say it's Stony Creek right there with them. Now, I don't think Stony Creek's right there with Clarkson, Lake Orion, and Bloomby Hills. I think they can be up there with teams like Adams, teams like like Oxford's going through an interesting transition period. But I think Stony Creek's right there. I mean, they got the coaching, they got the talent, but I don't know if they're seasoned enough. I just don't know if Stony Creek is seasoned enough right now. So when you look at those teams, clearly the top teams right now are in that red division are Lake Orion, Clarkston, Bloomfield Hills. Then you have Stony Creek, maybe Seaholm, maybe Oxford. Or also Troy. You know what I mean? Forgot to mention Troy. Troy, yeah, they got Jessica Robinson. They got others in there on that mix too. But when you look at Troy, you got Jessica Robinson, Frank Mariah, Kelsey Moeller. Ross is getting Division I looks. There's no doubt about it. But when you look at the teams that are mentioned here, this is a team I think could be a sleeper. I think they could give. I don't know if they match up well with teams like Clarkston, Lake Orion, or Bloomfield Hills. Maybe Stony Creek, but they could give teams like Stony Creek, or they could give like Stony Creek, Oxford, Seaholm, Troy games. But when you look at it, everything's going to go through Robinson with Troy. Tom Bigley coaches a really good team. He's got a good program. So when you look at Troy, we went the red. I think it's going to be really tough for the Colts. But, Troy right now is a team I think that could do some damage in the red, but I don't think they're a team that can win a division. I really don't. And that's because you have two state-ranked powers in there, and you got another one, honorable mention there, and another honorable mention there. So it's going to be tough for Troy, no doubt, to basically see what they have. So it's going to be interesting to see what Troy does. It really is. A team that I really think could do well, if they can get their act together, is Oxford. You look at the Wildcats. This is their third coach in 5 years. Brian Kemp takes over the team. Of course, a lot of people know Kemp from his days at Madison Heights Bishop Foley. Of course, this is a program, when you have girls like Ellie Wright, Kai Mulholland, Daniel D. Riker, and Madison Weiss. That's talent right there. When I saw them a couple weeks ago, I didn't think Oxford looked good. I really thought they did not look good. And I think that's part of the coaching transition. Of course, yeah, Oxford had LaToya Thomas coaching them last year. They had a very good outside hitter. They lost two good players in Nicole Elserman and Paige Briggs transferred out. That's hard to replace if you're Oxford, because those are two outside hitters who can do damage, and you have one that can go in there and basically create everything. They're trying to develop killers from scratch. Players that can kill the ball from scratch. So basically, it's not easy to say that. And it's basically tough, to say the least, with Oxford. It's going to be a really interesting. They got to develop those players and go and kill the ball that can spike it down. If they do, Oxford's got some chance. They got a chance. They got a chance to do some damage. But right now, I think they are going through a coaching transition. They got to find some. They got to find some heavy hitters. They got to find some heavy hitters. They got to find players that go in there and kill the ball. They need them. Because you got talent. Because you look at the top teams right now. You look at Clarkston. You look at Clarkston, Malinowski, Lukenbach. And, of course, and you look at Lake Orion. Lake Orion's got, of course, Briggs, Sargent, and Van Loon. And you look at Bloomfield Hills with Roussel. And Stony Creek, of course, you look at the Stratton sisters and Molly Esmus. Oxford's got to address, and of course Troy with Jessica Robinson and Fran McBride. So Oxford really doesn't have that true killer. You don't have that true killer who can go and kill the ball, who can kill it. So that's something they have to address. They have to address that. And they're also going through a tough coaching transition. We're going from LaToya Thomas to Brian Kim. Not an easy thing to do. It's got to happen during the season. So, that's not going to be an easy transition. That's not going to be easy. And then you look at Rochester Adams. Adams, of course, is a team that made the final at the Stony Creek Invitational. They have plenty of experience from a team that was nearly 500 last year. But they're going to make some noise this year in the white. They got some talent. When you look at Annabelle White, Paige Heelan, Ashley Rill, Sophie Knoll, Lauren Kinley, Sophie Hohauser, and Julia Valero. That's a ton of experience back. They were in it with Lake Orion for a little while. Then the Dragons used their depth to wear them out. But when you look at Adams, they can compete. They can seriously compete in this league. They can compete and do very well for themselves. I think they're one of the favorites in the white when you seriously look at this team. They're a team that could do some damage, but when they have to play a team in the red, and they're going to have to play some, considering especially when you get in the late in the year, you got to play either a Stony Creek or a Utica Eisenhower. Utica Eisenhower is a state-ranked team. Stony Creek's an honorable mention team. And you're playing one of those teams. I don't know if Adams matches up with both those teams this upcoming deep in the playoffs. That's $1 million question that Adams has. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they have. But they look good. They look really good. I was really impressed with them. Another team I think that can make some noise is Farmington. Farmington's got some experience back. They're in the blue division. They're a young team. They got a couple players that should be solid. And Courtney Sikowski, Sydney Eggleton, Kimberly Watley, and Jenny Cameron. The division is very manageable. It's when they get to later in the year, they're going to have to they should be well battle tested. I mean, yeah, you're going to have the City Cup when you look at playing Harrison and North Farmington. Both those teams are good volleyball programs. Michael Love's done a good job with Harrison, despite the fact that they lost Stephanie Jegovic last year. North Farmington, people are high on them. I'm high on them this year. They got a ton of experience back for Cat Hall. So, so when you look at Farmington, I think they're going to do some damage in the blue. But they got Hazel Park, Ferndale. Hazel Park and Ferndale are those two teams I think that are going to give Farmington challenges. Maybe Southfield. Maybe Southfield. But I don't know if Southfield Arts and Tech can give Farmington a challenge. I really don't know. But we'll see. We shall see what they have. It's not going to be an easy ride. That is for sure. That is for sure. So when you look at, and of course my other teams to keep an eye on, of course, is mentioned, another team to keep an eye on this year, and I think I'm going through the loop here, and I think people think I'm going to be crazy, but keep an eye on Royal Oak this year. I mean, they got a new coach, Emily Burwinkle. They got two players back in Sierra Randall and Allie Roberts. I mean, that's a team I think to keep an eye on, is Royal Oak. They're in the Fable division. I think Burwinkle, of course, she's got an AU background. I think it's going to help Royal Oak out a lot. But we shall see what happens. We shall see what happens. My final thoughts on the volleyball, of course, when you look at volleyball heading in the year, clearly when you look at the league, I think you got three superior teams I think it could really compete. You got at least another three to five teams that could be really, really solid. I mean, it could make some noise, but at the end of the day, when you look at the top volleyball programs, you got to look at Clarkston, Lake Orion, Blue Bay Hills, maybe Stony Creek, maybe Troy, maybe Adams. Those are those teams that could do some damage, not only during a season, but also could make some noise in the playoffs. I think the top 5 teams in my Inside the OA preseason top 10 are more than capable of doing some damage this upcoming season. Because I think those teams, and you got Clarkson and Orion in the same district, but whoever wins that district could do some damage. And of course, when you look at Blue Bay Hills, they got to go through Birmingham Marion. Stony Creek with Utica Eisenhower. Troy, I think it got a really nice draw. They got to keep an eye on Seaholm. So I think out of those teams, the top 6 teams could make some noise this upcoming season. They could make some noise. Now we shall see what happens as we get deeper into the volleyball season. So we'll see what happens. Okay, now when we come back, we're going to do my projections for week number 3 here on OAA Now. Welcome back to OAA Now. I'm Sammy Termina here. We're going to preview each game here for the week. For this upcoming week, of course, we're going to go from each division, from blue, white, and red for the week, of course, and then give my insight on each of the games heading into the weekend. Of course, let's look at our first game. Of course, we're going to go blue first. Our first game is Farmington taking on Harperwood Chandler Park Academy. Now, both these teams are coming in 0-2. And, of course, Harperwood Chandler Park Academy lost 20-8 last weekend to, I think it was Detroit Central they lost to. So when you look at this matchup, Farmington really's got some issues. And you really look at Farmington, they got some defensive issues. They've got some offensive issues. They had 2 guys that were suspended last week that didn't play, so I think that could be a huge factor there. Chandler Park Academy, they got some good play. They got some solid players, but I don't know if they can defend very well. I mean, they gave up 32 against Detroit Mumford. So when you look at that matchup, I just think it's going to be I think this game's going to be really close. I really do. And I think at the end of the day, when you look at it here, I think when you look at Farmington, I mean, this is a game that they should win. But if they lose this game, I think they're in a lot of trouble, especially because now you still got to play Royal Oak on there. You got to play, you still got a tough schedule throughout. I mean, North Farmington's going to be there. So I'm going to take Farmington in this one by a sliver. I really do, because I think that Chandler Park Academy, they're going to come out ready to play. I just think that it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there with Farmington, but I think they're going to knock off Chandler Park Academy in that one. Let's go to another game. Of course, we got North Farmington taking on Pontiac. Of course, this will be the first game at Wisner Stadium. Pontiac was destroyed last week, 60-6 by Hamtramck, and Hamtramck's a good team. There's no doubt about that, but Pontiac, I didn't think deserved to give up 60. I mean, they're not deep to begin with, but at the end of the day, this was not a good omen for Pontiac. I mean, and they're going up against the North Farmington team that's going through a lot of issues as well. When you look at, of course, Bob Chiaza's team, they against Greenville, they looked good early, and then the wheels fell off. And then it was very similar to last week, of course, when they took on Royal Oak. They had a nice start, and then all of a sudden everything fell off the window. And, the last 2 games for North Farmington, they've only scored 13 points. That's not good. That is really not good when you look at a Bobcat as a team. And they got a tough match. And it's going to be very interesting to see who wins this one. I think North Farmington will win this one because they got enough depth. I think they got more depth than Pontiac. But it wouldn't surprise me if Pontiac gives them a game and gives Hazel Park everything it could handle in this one. I think for Pontiac right now, I'm not being mean, but I think their 2 best chances of winning were well beyond them. I thought they would have had a chance against Detroit, Old Redford Academy. They ended up losing that one. And then, of course, last week against Hamtramck, I just think that they really blew their chance in that one. So it'll be a tough matchup for Pontiac in that one. Next we got is Avondale and Ferndale. Of course, 2 teams going in different directions. Ferndale going up, Avondale going down. And you really look at, of course, Ferndale got a big win last year in Auburn Hills against Avondale. Now the game's in Ferndale. I know it's going to be closer than people think, but I'm going to go with Ferndale on this one because I think that Keshawn Smith, Zozer Little are going to be the big difference makers in that one. I think they're going to be just enough to stop Ed Kater's offense, and I think it's going to be a really, really tough call for Avondale in that one. I think it wouldn't surprise me if Ed Kater's team goes to 0-3 to start the year in that one. Then, of course, we got Hazel Park and Royal Oak, of course, in that matchup. This is going to be a good matchup, I believe, because Hazel Park's much better than people think, especially because now you look at adding a guy like Gary Griffin, the defensive side of the ball, as their defensive coordinator. I think it's going to be a really, really tough challenge for Hazel Park. Going against Royal Oak. Royal Oak right now is riding on cloud 9 right now. If they go 3-0, it'll be the first time in school history that they've ever went 3-0. And that would say a lot about this program, where Ray McMahon has had this program. Of course, the last few years it's not been very good. So when you look at that matchup, at the end of the day, I'm tempted to take the upset. I'm very, very tempted to take this upset. And you know what? People are going to ask me to say I'm going to be crazy, but you know what? I'm going to take the upset. I'm going to take Hazel Park. They're going to take Royal Oak and get them back to earth. I think Hazel Park upsets Royal Oak this week because they have enough defense to stop the Ravens, and I think it's going to be a really interesting match of how they're matched up. I just think that Royal Oak right now is on borrowed time, and I think Hazel Park, they got a lot of experience. I think they're going to get this done. I think Hazel Park's due, and I think they're going to give Royal Oak their first loss of the season. I think it's going to happen. So we'll see what happens there. On the white division, of course, when you look at the white, it's a really interesting matchup when you look at a couple of these games. When you look at, of course, I think a trap game here is going to be Harrison and Stony Creek. And you really look at that matchup. Stony Creek's a team that, they've given teams their best shots. This is a team that lost a really tough one last week to them, Groves. Groves, of course, it was 14-3. Stony Creek had them up 3-0 at halftime. And they're right now, I think, a team that's up and coming. I think their defense is starting to show. I think they got a good defense to be very competitive in this game. They just really had one bad quarter last week against Groves. That was the third quarter. And I think for Harrison, of course, they had a nice week last week beating Troy, but you look at what happened. And I don't know if that game with East Grand Rapids is still on their mind when they got absolutely destroyed. But when you look at Harrison, this is a trap game because this is their first home game. It's going to be insane. Stony Creek's been on the road twice, and I think the Cougars are used to being on the road. It wouldn't surprise me if Harrison loses this game to Stony Creek. It really wouldn't. Harrison's going to be favored. They're expected to win. Stony Creek's not expected to win. So I think Harrison is going. So I think Stony Creek's under the Coach Bob Lancey train is going to be going like this and pulling off a big upset over Harrison. I think they're going to pull it off. I really do. And it's going to be very interesting what happens there. But I think Stony Creek's got enough talent to pull off the big upset. Groves and Berkeley, I just don't see any problem with Groves in that one with Berkeley. I mean, Berkeley got blown out last week by Seaholm. I mean, 49-6, what else to say? I mean, Groves right now, they're on cloud nine right now. Again, they're right now rolling. There's a reason why. They're a solid program. I mean, Groves, they're not going to give any doubts. I mean, I think Groves will go in there and destroy Berkeley at Hurley Field. It's going to be a really, really tough matchup for the Bears in that one. Troy against Rochester is going to be really interesting because last year it was Rochester that lost to Troy, which eventually cost Rochester a trip to the playoffs. A lot of people say it was that Stony Creek game that cost Rochester a trip to the playoffs. It really wasn't. It was the game with Troy where they lost. That's what cost them the playoffs. Now, Rochester's got senior experience. Didn't look good last week against Oak Park. They were just completely embarrassed, 48-0. I mean, what can you say? 48-0 embarrassment on your new field. Horrible. Just horrible. And now you got to go on the road to Troy. Troy was absolutely spanked 30-3 by Harrison. And you look at that matchup, I think this is a good opportunity for Rochester, to look themselves in the mirror and say, hey, we're here. We still have our goals in front of us. I think Rochester goes and wins this game because of their senior experience. And you really look at it, they have a lot of capability to show that they have that experience. And I think it's going to be a huge difference maker. Now, they still got to play Harrison. They still got to play Grove, Seaholm, Stony Creek. Those are not easy games. But playing Oak Park, I think, kind of helps Rochester because now they don't get to see him anymore. So, so at the end of the day, I'm gonna take Rochester knock out Troy. I think it's gonna be a tough call for the Colts. But I think both teams are gonna have an increase. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a really interesting matchup. And I think that the Falcons are going to beat the Colts this upcoming week. And then the big one in the white, I think, is going to be Seaholm and Oak Park. Now, Seaholm's got a lot of experience. They had a bounce-back game after losing a heartbreaker to Bloomfield Hills 21-19. The bounce back destroyed Berkeley at Hurley Field. Now this is their biggest challenge. Go in the Night Valley, take on a talented Oak Park team. Oak Park got all the talent in the world, destroyed Rochester last week, lost a tough one to Utica Eisenhower. I think at the end of the day, I think home field and talent beats out senior experience. So I'm going to take home field and talent to knock off experience in this one in Night Valley. So I like Oak Park in that one. Pretty much simple. Pretty much straightforward and simple. And then, of course, let's go to the Red Division. Of course, the Red, very interesting matchups here in the league. Of course, let's talk about our first matchup, which is going to be Southfield Arts and Tech and Troy Athens. That's at Southfield. I don't think it's going to be much of a matchup in this one. I just think Southfield Arts and Tech, they're 0-2. I'm not pressing the panic button on this team yet. I mean, this is a team that really has. This is a football team I think it could do some damage. They've lost both games by a combined 12 points. So I think Southfield Arts and Tech right now, they're 0. The record says they're 0-2, but I think they're fine. I just think they're going to find a way and bounce back and beat Troy Athens on their home field. I just think Troy Athens, they got a lot over their head. I think they got no chance in this game. So at the end of the day, I got to give an edge to the Warriors. I think the Warriors are going to knock off the Red Hawks. I think because their defense will be a difference maker in this one, and I think it's going to be a really, really tough matchup to say the least for Troy Athens. I just think that and Troy Athens, of course, they lost 17-7 last week to Oxford. Of course, when you score 7 points against Oxford, that's a concern heading in that one. Southfield, a much better offensive team than Oxford. So it's going to be a tough task for them going forward there for the Red Hawks. Speaking of Oxford, they get to play Rochester Adams. Of course, Adams knocked off Orion 39-8 last week. They take on Oxford. Adams is rolling right now. And the way that they're playing, this is a football team. I think it can make some noise. they're rolling people right now. I mean, they beat Rochester pretty bad, and then I think the shocker of the weekend was when they went and beat Orion. I didn't think that they would. I thought that game would be much closer than the score indicated. It really wasn't. Adams was truly the better team in that game. I mean, Orion's got some problems they've got to address. Adams right now looks like a well-oiled machine. They're going against Oxford. Oxford's a pound rock team. If it comes down to wide receiver, if it comes down to a pass, if it comes down to a high-scoring affair, I got to take Adams in that one. And it's Adams' home open. No, and it's a home game for Adams. So I'm going to take Adams in this one at home over Oxford. It's going to be a really interesting game. I think it could be close, and people think, but end of the day, I like Adams to knock off Oxford in this one pretty, not convincingly, but I think it's going to be closer than people think in that one. And then, of course, next we got Lake Orion and West Bloomfield. Both these teams are shockingly coming in 0-2. And you really look at it here. Both these teams, West Bloomfield had West Bloomfield had a bad loss to Walled Lake Western. Then they had a really bad loss to, and then the game they should not have lost was the Bloomfield Hills in the Swamp. Then, of course, you look at Lake Orion. Of course, they lost 2017 Chippewa Valley. And then you look at their game with Rochester Adams. They were just completely destroyed. 39-8, and you really look at it. Lake Orion's offense has had issues scoring. I mean, this is an offense that's got. Do I think this offense misses Chris Bell? Yes, I do. And the reason why this team misses Chris Bell, and it's because of his offensive play calling. Now, I'm not saying that. But it clearly looks like right now this football team misses Chris Bell's play calling. And you really look at West Bloomfield. They're mad as crazy because of what happened last week. They lost 24, they were up 24-7 to West Bloomfield. 24-7. And then you come in there, you let John Paddock and Ty Slazinski take over that game, and you give up 21 straight? It's unbelievable. Tells me that every time, and then just 2 weeks prior against Walled Lake Western, they let Sam Johnson score. They let him score. I mean, they've got issues against running quarterbacks. And you look at this game, Lake Orion's got quarterback issues. And of course, West Bloomfield, they got issues stopping people. This one's going to be interesting. I mean, if Lake Orion can solve their quarterback issues in this game, if they can solve their offensive issues, score over 20 points, they got a chance in this one. They've got to score more than 20 to win this game. Do I think they can? I don't know. West Bloomfield is a good enough team to score over 20. So we'll see what happens in that one. And then the last game here is Clarkston and Bloomfield Hills. And this is going to be an interesting game. I think John Paddock's going to have a big game against Clarkston secondary. I really do. Tyson Zitsky's going to guard probably Michael Flugel. So, end of the day here, offensively, I think Clarkston's going to score. But I think Bloomfield Hills is going to score. It's going to be a good old-fashioned shootout. I think there's going to be an upset here. I think Bloomfield Hills can pull it off. I really do. They got so much confidence right now. They just beat Seaholm on the road. You go in the Swamp and win there, that's big-time confidence. If you go into Clarkston and win there, that's incredible. I think they're going to do it. And if they don't, it's going to be what it is. So we're going to see what happens. We're going to see what happens. I got Bloomfield Hills pulling off the upset. So we'll see what happens going forward. Final thoughts here, of course, we'll see what happens. See what happens this week. We shall. Yes, we shall. Can everybody sign off here for this week's episode of OAA Now. Catch me next week. I'll see you next week, everybody. See you soon. Bye, everybody.